Now on the Georgia Vote, one-on-one with Georgia's Lieutenant Governor.
Are you going to run for governor in 2026?
A discussion about 2026 and that contentious legislation regarding girls and women's sports. Plus, a look at the impact President Trump's government makeover is having in Georgia. And this local artist is a glass act, and he's also our voice of the voter who shares what he wants to see in the community that has embraced him. It's all right now on the Georgia Vote.
From the 11 Alive studios, this is the Georgia Vote with Faith Jesse and Zach Merchant.
Well, good morning and welcome in. Faith Jesse is off today, and it was another packed week of politics. Let's bring you up to speed. Georgia's Secretary of State wants the federal government to pull the plug on an ongoing lawsuit that began in 2021. Brad Raffensperger, a Republican, is asking the Department of Justice and new Attorney General Pam Bondi to drop the legal action against Georgia's voting law. The suit, filed by the DOJ under the Biden administration, alleges Georgia unlawfully discriminated against black voters by limiting voting access after the 2020 presidential election. Former Georgia Congressman Doug Collins, officially a part of the Trump administration. The Senate confirmed Collins to lead the Veterans Affairs Department. The Gainesville Republican, who used to represent the 9th Congressional District, received bipartisan support. And our first election of 2025 is set for Tuesday. 2 seats on the Cobb County Commission are on the line, although this is just the primary. It sets up the special election in April. It's the latest turn in a long-running dispute over the county's boundaries. The election is needed after a judge threw out the map the county used in 2024 and ordered the new election using the state legislators' maps. The Trump administration's rapid moves to downsize the government sparked uncertainty for thousands of federal workers who work here in Georgia. Here's where things stand. A judge paused the Trump administration's buyout offers to federal workers just hours before the original deadline to accept the deal. The White House still stands firmly behind the buyout plan. Spearheading the efforts, Elon Musk, tapped by President Donald Trump to lead the Department of Government Efficiency, also known as DOGE. Georgia Congressman Buddy Carter, a Republican, voiced his support for the plan.
Seeing where we can make government more efficient, seeing where we can have more than 6% of the federal employees coming to the office full time, seeing where we got empty buildings sitting here in Washington, D.C. with nobody in them. Look, it is time. You and I are paying for this. You pay your taxes, I pay my taxes. The American taxpayers are the ones paying for this. We deserve an answer.
NBC News reports more than 60,000 federal employees agreed to take the buyout. As you can expect, Georgia Republicans and Democrats have very different views of the project.
And again, it's no disrespect intended to people that work in the federal government. The federal government is too big. We have too many people who are employed by the federal government. It is not sustainable. And so this is part of a plan of action.
And we have people afraid to show up to work. We have people afraid that they're going to be the next on the chopping block. This is a government takeover by an unelected billionaire, Elon Musk, coming in and destroying our federal government.
Questions linger about the details of the plan, including over benefits and pensions for federal employees if they take the buyout. Another big development in both state and national politics this week, legislative and policy efforts to ban transgender athletes from women's sports. It's a divisive issue that Donald Trump emphasized in his 2024 presidential campaign. Many Georgia Republicans have vocally embraced it. SB 1 passed out of the state Senate Thursday, with a couple of Democrats also supporting it. But other Democrats passionately argued against the bill.
I know where this bill comes from. This bill comes from exclusionary politics that have a natural endpoint, and that natural endpoint is the erasure of trans people.
Senate Bill 1 would still have to pass the House before it could become a law. The NCAA this week announced a policy change itself, limiting women's sports to athletes assigned female at birth, and President Donald Trump signed a similar executive order. Georgia Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones was in Washington for that signing. Jones is also one of the people rumored to be planning a run for governor in 2026 when Brian Kemp is term limited and barred from running again. We sit down with the Republican one-on-one in this week's Sunday Conversation. The new session is a couple weeks underway. When you look at it right now, what are your biggest priorities?
Well, obviously, the priorities are a lot. It's always about balancing the budget first, and then we look at things like healthcare, transportation, education, but this year it's a little different because our big focus is going to be on from the Hurricane Helene, the counties that were affected by that, the counties and cities that are affected by that. It was quite a number of those, and we were still focused on getting more relief dollars to them.
How long is the cleanup process and recovery process going to take?
Well, they got the essentials as far as power and water and everything else, but there's still areas and communities where trees still and debris needs to be cleaned up, and then you got to look at particularly for your ag business, what the long-term consequences of that storm are going to be.
Let's shift gears to another big topic that's actually very germane today, as we're taping this interview on Thursday, and a bill that I know you have championed here in the state legislature is up for a vote in the Senate today,
Sure.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That's SB 1?
Yeah, it's SB 1. That's a bill that really it's been percolating around the Capitol for about 3 years now. Senator Greg Dolezal, has worked very hard on it. It's just simply saying, boys can't participate in girls' sports. It was a measure that we actually brought forward 3 years ago.
And in particular, just to be, I hate to interrupt, but just to be clear to somebody who might be picking this interview up in long form, this bill focuses on keeping kids who identify as transgender out of the sport that they identify as, and restricting it to their sex assigned at birth, right?
Yeah, that's right. But biological children playing in their designated either boy or girl sports, and it's for high school and college age young people. I was in Washington, D.C. yesterday at the executive order that President Trump signed, and our bill models basically what his executive order says, but this is a measure that we're serious about. I'm a father. I've got a daughter. She's very athletic. I would hate to know that she was cut from a team or loses her spot from a male student that was trying to play in a female sport.
How many trans kids are playing sports in Georgia right now?
There have been a few that I've heard about. In fact, I was at a private school game just recently, and there's, a little boy playing in middle school, a little boy playing on the girls' basketball team. So you have seen it. It is a very small number. I realize that. I don't like these cultural wars that we end up in a lot of times down here at the Capitol, but they are sometimes are necessary because of a group, a far-fringing group that wants to push it as an agenda and keep pushing it on school systems and everything else.
For the kids who are, as you said yourself, it's a pretty small percentage of Georgia athletes, but for those Georgia athletes who identify as transgender, for those kids who are watching this legislation move its way through the Capitol and may be concerned, maybe feel singled out, what would you want them to know?
Well, like I said, it's not trying to marginalize any individual children. That's the last thing we want to do. But it is trying to protect the integrity of female students, and girls' sports.
There's a lot of speculation about your future. Yeah. Are you going to run for governor in 2026?
I'm going to look at it, in 26. I'm going to finish out this session as lieutenant governor because it's my job, it's my responsibility. That's what people elected me to do. I'm not one of those politicians that's always looking for the next gig. They elected me to be lieutenant governor, so I'm going to do this role right now. But there's no secret that I'm looking at 26 in the governor's race, and we'll see where the chips fall. That's always one of those big decisions that I need to get my wife's input on and the kids.
That is just part of our conversation. To see the full interview, including the lieutenant governor's proposals to address school safety challenges following the deadly shooting last year at Appalachia High School, look for this interview right now on the 11 Alive Plus app. It is free on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. We are coming right back with a closer look at immigration enforcement efforts across Georgia. Hear one Metro Atlanta mayor's views on the Trump administration's immigration crackdown. That's next. The nationwide immigration enforcement crackdown and protests against it continue to impact communities here in Metro Atlanta. This week, we talked with Brookhaven Mayor John Park about recent immigration enforcement efforts there, as new data from the White House shows more than 8,000 people have been arrested nationwide since January 23rd. According to what you're telling us, at least a few of those appear to have happened in the Brookhaven community, others across the Buford Highway community. When you hear those numbers, what's your reaction?
My reaction is that it's going to affect our communities, right? We in Brookhaven, we pride ourselves on community engagement, on being connected to the people. And our first priority is keeping people safe. And in order to keep people safe, they need to be able to trust us as a government and mainly trust our police. Trust that if they call them, that they will protect them and that they will work in their best interests. And that is not a one-time thing. This is a relationship that we have been building as a city for the past 12 years since we've become a city. And I worry that that trust could potentially erode.
Does the city of Brookhaven consider itself to be a sanctuary city?
No. Brookhaven is a limited services government. What that means is we have our swim lanes. We provide, paving, we provide parks, we provide, public safety, and that's it. And so therefore, we're not going to go beyond that. We're just going to focus on the things that we're responsible for.
If Immigrations and Customs Enforcement asked the Brookhaven Police Department to assist them in an immigration enforcement effort, would the Brookhaven Police Department do that?
So there are nuances to that. We wouldn't. So there's different kinds of assistance, right? If they said we want you to go and pick this person up, we would, specifically. We will say that that's not our responsibility. If they were to say we're having a very large, action, we want you to, be in the area and be ready. Of course, we do that for any federal agency.
To somebody who might be watching this right now, and they are worried about their immigration status and their potential future in this country, in the Brookhaven community, what would be your message to them?
My message to them is, I'm praying for you. There are resources out there for you. Brookhaven has a partnership with the Latin American Association to provide kind of citizen outreach, to provide resident outreach. Reach out to the services, but Brookhaven is here to maintain community. Brookhaven is not here to enforce, specific federal actions like that.
Your message to President Trump would be what?
My message to President Trump is have mercy, show some compassion. Understand how this affects everyone's lives, please.
To see more of our conversation, including Mayor Park's own immigration story, look for our extended interview. It's streaming right now on the 11 Alive Plus app. It is available for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV. And it is time now for our political roundtable. Today we have Amy Morton. She is the Chief Executive Officer for Southern Majority, and she has consulted for prominent Democrats in the state, including State Senator Jen Jordan and former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. Also joining us, Spiro Amburn, Senior Vice President at McGuire Woods Consulting. He has previously served as Chief of Staff for Republican Georgia House Speakers John Burns and David Ralston. Both seasoned veterans of the panel appearing on the Super Bowl Sunday. It's good to see you both.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Let's start here. It's another big week inside the Georgia State Legislature. Amy, what are you watching right now happening under the Gold Dome?
Well, of course, we're watching the tort reform legislation as it moves and wondering if we're going to see insurance reform legislation come behind it. We don't think so, but we think that it should.
And that's the Democrats' position, right? Some
Yes.
people aren't quite up to speed on this. So explain what the tension is here between tort reform and what you're calling insurance reform.
Well, I think we all agree that Georgians should not have to choose between paying for their car insurance and putting gas in their car. So the idea that insurance rates are too high is something that I think we can all get on board with. Where Democrats differ from the governor's position on this is the idea that somehow tort reform will magically fix that. We haven't seen that happen in other states where there's strict tort reform. We already have tort reform in Georgia. We believe that there should also be transparency around the setting of insurance rates and other reforms to impact that would actually impact those fees.
And this is Governor Brian Kemp's big sort of marquee push so far this session. Spiro, what's the Republicans' position on this?
Yeah, it's obviously one of the top priorities, if not the top priority, certainly for the governor. Speaker Burns and Lieutenant Governor Jones have both also gotten behind this initiative. Of course, the devil's always in the details. This is an issue that has been visited many times in the past. You know, the business community, both large businesses and small, have been asking for relief for a long time because of liability issues, insurance rates. So we know there were two bills that were introduced in the Senate last week by Senator John F. Kennedy, and it's going to be interesting to see those measures as they start to move as to what sort of compromise there will be on each side.
Well, like Spiro was saying, the devil's in the details, essentially. And I read a really interesting piece last week, an op-ed in the AJC that Pat McDonough and his associate had written about how the current proposed tort reform legislation could affect victims of sex trafficking, because that would limit their ability to recover civil damages against businesses that either know or like hotels, that knew or should know that they were profiting from illegal sex trafficking.
And this is, we should be clear, this is an op-ed piece, so this is sort of,
that's right.
The bill has not been passed, legislation is
that's
not there.
Right.
Spiro, last word to you on this quickly.
I would say, you know, everybody wants to preserve the right to trial by jury. That's a fundamental constitutional right. I think the key term here is common sense lawsuit reform.
Is there a story of sort of two big themes emerging inside our state legislature? On the one hand, you have this tort reform initiative. On the other hand, there's a lot of attention on divisive, attention-grabbing social issues. Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, one of many Republican proponents of SB 1, it's the first bill out the gate in the Senate, that would restrict the access of transgender women and girls to women's sports. We've got about 40 seconds left here in this block. Spiro, what's the state of play here?
Yeah, I mean, this is an issue that most common sense Americans, I think, fall in line with the fact that, you know, boys need to be playing boys' sports, girls need to be playing girls' sports. You saw that with two Democrats voting for Senate Bill 1. You know, frankly, Democrats, you know, have been wrong on this issue and out of touch with the voters. And, you know, if they continue to do that, they'll continue to be in the minority in Georgia.
And Spiro, I want to jump in here. We've got 15 seconds left. Amy, I want to make sure you have a chance to respond to that.
Well, discrimination of any form is always wrong. On the other hand, all lawmakers, Democrats, Republicans, need to be listening to Georgia families and centering the economy in our policies.
We've got a lot more to talk about here, and the good news is we are not finished. We're going to break, but the panel will be right back after this. Welcome back into our Politics Roundtable. Amy Morton, Spiro Amburn still with us. Let's start here. There is, of course, a lot going on in state politics. There's a lot going on in national politics, too, and they impact each other. Amy, I want to start with you. The Trump administration is about 3 weeks into the second iteration of President Trump in the Oval Office. How are state Democrats responding to what's coming out of the Oval right now?
Well, I think I'll take that from a local government perspective. President Trump and his colleague, Elon Musk, have done all the things that they said they were going to do and more. Many of my Republican friends said, oh, don't worry about that, they're not going to do that, but they have, and it's been very disruptive locally. For example, the Bibb County school system had a federal grant for electric school buses that would have come from Bluebird. That money is on hold now, and so that contract is, they're waiting to see what happens, and that impacts not just the school system, but also an industry that's nearby.
Spiro, I'm assuming Georgia Republicans, many of them have a different view on this.
Sure. Look, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, I think you have to agree that President Trump has acted with haste and with intention. And I think that for Georgia, this is a good thing. I mean, and you see that with many of the key appointments, including my good friend Doug Collins, Kelly Loeffler, David Perdue, Herschel Walker, the list could go on. I think it's going to be very good for the state of Georgia as you see the president start to implement his policies.
Amy, Spiro, thank you both as always. When we return, the voice of the voter has unique talents that make him a popular part of his community. what he's most hopeful for in our politics in 2025. That's next. In this new era of politics, keeping real people at the center of the conversation is as important as it ever was. After all, you can't have the Georgia vote without Georgia voters. In this week's Voice of the Voter, we head to Decatur to meet Nate Nardi at the studio he uses to pursue his passion and share it with others. Tell me where we are right now.
So right now you're at Decatur Glassblowing. There's days in here, especially throughout the holidays, where we'll have chairs set up throughout the shop. We're accommodating, maybe one class every 2 hours of the day.
When you look around this room and see the business that you've built and see in your mind's eye all the people who come through here and learn from you, how does that hit your heart?
I'm very lucky and I was blessed to have all the support I've had from the community here, and to be a part of the community here in Decatur. I know glass itself has changed my life in a positive way, and I hope maybe some way I can do that for other people with what I'm doing here.
No secret, we just had a big election. We're into the new year now. When you look around, what do you worry about?
There's a lot you can't worry about. I'm very appreciative of all the support I have here in the community, the people that I deal with and work with and talk with on a day-to-day basis. And when you start looking at the news and social media and things like that, it really seems like there's a lot of trust and hate and things like that out there, which I'm very lucky that I don't see that here in my shop on a daily basis. I am worried about the political situation and politics. I don't really understand it, how all that works or is happening the way it's happening. It's very confusing to me. I think it's very confusing to a lot of people. I think confusion itself may be a big issue, people not understanding each other and, what's going on in other people's lives.
Does it feel overwhelming sometimes?
Oh yeah, it very easily can feel overwhelming.
What would you like to see your elected leaders do more of this year?
I guess get more involved in community, positive things in the community, for making it a better place for the people that are here, living, working. I mean, there are, a lot of people that are struggling right now, that can use some help, and how do we help those people and work together to make this a better place for everybody.
We always end with this. What are you optimistic about?
I'm very optimistic that I know there's a lot of great people in the community here that I see coming through our shop and in the community on a regular basis doing good things. And I'm very optimistic that those people are still going to be here pursuing what they're pursuing and making it a better community for us all.
Well, thanks for watching us today. We hope to see you back here again next Sunday at 11 for another edition of the Georgia Vote.